Hey everyone, this is a 1999 GT Avalanche. This is how I got it, basically just a bare frame. The shiny factory finish had also deteriorated into this quite hazy matte look that you see here. The decals were also quite chipped, but I could still tell that it was a GT Avalanche under it. So it needed quite a bit of love. The derailleur hanger was broke. The factory Alex cranks were there though. The decals actually look pretty cool like this. Another thing that came with it was a seat post. It's definitely not the correct fitting one. I don't know what this is they shoved in here. So what the previous owner did was they used this Shimano SAS for a derailleur. And basically you can just use the quick release skewer to clamp it on. Luckily the 7000 series aluminium frame was in good nick. There were no cracks or anything, which is a bit of a concern with the old aluminium. But this one is held up nicely, apart from the dulled look of it. So I'm building this bike up for Arfi, who pretty much gave me free rein over the build. I wanted to do it justice and give it a really nice birthday. It's certainly not in the worst condition that I've seen a bike in of this age, but it definitely deserves a nice spruce up. One of the first things that I did was give it a quick test polish on the rear seat stay on the left hand side. But after doing that, I really wanted to polish the whole frame. So the seat post binder bolt that came out of it was bent. Pulling this little pin out and everything, it made me feel a bit sorry for it, not gonna lie. The seat post clamp area was pretty damaged as well, so I know that would need a bit of a file up.
A bit of a number on it.
There was some burrs on the inside of the seat post tube as well. So cleaning those up just so that I wouldn't scratch up the seat post that I put in too much. It tidied up okay. I could have gone a bit more OCD on it, but it would have just been removing material pretty much for no reason other than a bit of aesthetics.
Voila. Penetrate.
So one of the good things about buying a bike that is pretty much already stripped is that you really only have a couple of parts to take off before you can start building it up. So my job here of tearing it down was pretty easy. It didn't take long at all. I don't know if you saw that, but it looked like there's grease on the spindle tapers as well. So that made my job a little bit easier. So thanks for that, person.
Whew.
So the non-drive side came off easily as well. And then being an alloy frame, I wasn't too concerned about getting the bottom bracket out. But like most things, I thought it was going to be easy, and then the drive side didn't want to come out.
Yeah, it's not gonna.
So I put a bit of my body weight on it, and sure enough, it did come out. I had a bit of a chuckle to myself. So another small issue with this frame is that one of the bottle cage bosses and the down tube was a bit loose. So the tricky part was getting out the old bolt, and I don't have a working riv nut gun, so I had to figure out something to fix that riv nut. So there are a couple of things that you can try, but the backup was JB Weld. Here comes the long process of polishing up this frame. I'm not going to go too hard on it though. If the decals were in better condition, then I would mask them up, but they're pretty awful, so I'm just going to sort of be careful around them. Send me patience. This is not going to be fun. So I started just by cleaning up the frame just with some soapy water to get like some dirt and grime off. And then I did a couple of test passes just to see what was going to be pretty time efficient. So I used some autosol with the power drill, and it came up nicely, but it was taking quite a long time. So the oxidization was quite bad, so it was taking quite a while to cut through that. So I used a fine Scotch pad just to cut through it. So here you can see around the decals is untouched, but there's a center strip that I've Scotch padded over. And same here, you can see it around the decals. So it's quite a big contrast really. So I kept going over the whole entire frame. It took quite a while, but I think in the long run it saved me a lot of time. I didn't time how long it was taking the autocell to get through, but you just have to trust me, it was taking longer than it should have. So I'm glad I went this route. And this is the finish of it after the Scotch pad, all done. I ended up going over the decals. It actually wasn't really damaging them. I have no idea how. I thought it was just going to chip them off. And then it was time for the autosole. So I'm using a wool attachment on a drill, and it seemed to clean it up quite nicely. After that, I went over with some Brasso on a rag. So the whole process, I did it over a few days, but I think it took must have taken 8 to 12 hours, somewhere in between there. I'm really happy with the result though, and it was definitely worth it. It came up so much nicer, and especially compared to what it was before. So from there, it was time to fix the bottle cage bosses. So both of the ones on the down tube were a little bit wiggly. So I thought I'd try the other ways first, and then I ended up using JB Weld anyways. So if you Google it, there are a couple ways that you don't have to use JB Weld or a rib nut gun, but they didn't work for me. So next result was just some JB Weld. So basically just sort of working it in under the bottle cage boss. And then I put a bolt in as well, so I could sort of lift it up a little bit and then try and work it under there. And then just peeling the masking tape off, just so the JB Weld doesn't stick it down. Then you're left with masking tape around the holes. Then let that set overnight. So as is pretty normal when you spend quite a bit of time polishing something up, you stare at it for a while. This cross brace for the seat stay behind the seat tube is probably my favourite part on the frame. Although I do really like the look of this decal here, I don't know why. So after staring at it for a while in the workshop, I thought I'd take it outside. And it looks so much better outside. I don't know why I didn't do this earlier. It's something about the sunlight and the reflections. I don't know what it is, but it looks so much better outside. So I kind of regret not making the JB Weld a little bit tidier around the bottle cage bosses, but that's, I mean, hindsight's 20/20, right? So these are the parts that we'll be using on the build. Afi deserved an upgrade over the stock Alex stuff, and I just so happened to have a few XT items sitting around. Unfortunately, I didn't have a complete group set, so I pieced together a few things. This X2 derailleur definitely needs a clean up. So first up is the cranks. Going to take the chain rings off and polish the crank arms themselves. The chainring I have, it's a narrow wide chainring. It's just one of those cheap ones, but these are good because they can sort of let you dial in the gearing for pretty cheap. So I think Afi can use something a bit higher. I think it'll be used on relatively flat ground, so he could probably go up to like a 38 or even a 40 tooth chainring. And it doesn't look like this chainring is going to fit because they have these ledges here. So I'll have to modify the chainring slightly so it fits over those. That's no biggie, I'll just use a file them out. So polishing up the cranks, I just use a bit of water, and then this is quite a coarse scouring pad. If you search 3M Scotch Brite, then you'll probably find them in a few different abrasion levels. You can tell them apart by their different colours. They also relate or correspond to different steel wool. I prefer using these over steel wool. You can see some deeper scratches there, but that would require quite a bit of sanding. So I'm just going to go over to the finer one now and then go over it with Autosol. And the power's going out. The power's gone out now, so this is what I have with it. Like what? So that was a bit too much Autosol. A little bit goes a long way with this, so you really don't need to use too much. Now that the chainring actually goes on, I can check the chainring bolts for length. Yeah, that's good. You just have to make sure that there's enough purchase for your chainring bolt tool, otherwise you won't be able to tighten them properly. Just a small dab of blue Loctite. One of the things that I don't like about polished items is that fingerprints and grease marks and everything, they show up really badly. So one thing you can do to get around that is to apply a wax. So this is just a pretty cheap car wax, and that helps quite a lot. As for clear coating polished items, I wouldn't really recommend it on something that is going to potentially get scuffed by shoes or something like that. Clear coat doesn't really stick too well to polished items. It's not really meant to. So when you scuff up against it, it tears it and peels it off. So it really doesn't look too great, especially on cranks. But things like stems or brakes, that sort of stuff, you can polish up and then clear coat and not worry too much about it. This one will need replacing. You can see the teeth have gone shallow and there's like that shark fin sort of look to it compared to this one. It would probably still work okay, it's just more likely to cause issues, so I think I'll have one I can replace with that. So this red derailleur is quite filthy, but nothing a bit of degreaser can't handle. So this steel cage of the red derailleur, it was missing a bit of paint. So I figure now that I've cleaned it up, all the grime was off it. It could actually rust out if I didn't do anything about it. So I thought I'd just throw some etch primer on it and then matte black it after that. The red derailleur tidied up quite nicely. That was just after some degreaser and then rinsing it all off. Then it was time to build it back up. A little drop of blue Loctite could provide a little bit of resistance to your derailleur limit screws, just enough so that your derailleur doesn't eat the spokes. I picked this Tiger stem up because it's quite a cool piece. It has like a hidden wedge clamp for the stereo tube. So the bolts needed evapor rusting, but that's not a big deal. The rest of the stem was quite tidy really, and it's quite a unique, cool old part, I thought. So this is the rear wheel I'm going with. It's a Parallax 8-speed originally, but so that'll take the 9-speed. It's laced to a Mavic X221 rim. Everything feels pretty nice. It just needs like a bit of a re-grease. It still feels smooth though. The rim feels good too. There's no lips and there's no like huge concave in the middle of it. So that should be a good wheel for it. So all the bearings, cone nuts and bearing surfaces were in really good condition. It had obviously never been run dry or left to sit in a puddle of water in its lifetime, which was really good to see. So I didn't have to replace anything. I could just pretty much clean it all up and then re-grease it. So I didn't record any of the front wheel servicing. It's quite similar to the rear, but the front rim isn't eyeletted like the rear one. The front hub was also a Parallax, I think a Sierra maybe. And the last thing is the pedals. That's just a 12mm socket in there. So I found these pedals online for quite a reasonable price. They said that there was a little bit of shaft play, but I thought I'd pull them apart, give them a service, and inspect them. And sure enough, all the bearing surfaces and both the pedals were quite tidy. They probably just hadn't been serviced in a while, so they came a little bit loose. So the pedals didn't come with any end caps when I got them, but I had a little bit of a look around and some old Shimano crank caps actually worked pretty good at capping the ends off. Just to help keep a bit of mud and stuff out. And that's the Toga stem with the bolts all evaporusted. It came out quite nicely. And these are all of the parts all cleaned and prepped to go on. Unfortunately, I couldn't find a matching brake lever to match that XT 9-speed shifter brake combo. So it's going to have to roll with a mismatched black one. But I'll keep an eye out for one, and then I can always send one down to Arfi if I do find one. So the initial plan was to use a rigid fork on this build, but I couldn't find any, and the only one that I had in my stash was a disc alloy. So it wouldn't really suit this build. So this is what I decided to use instead. So I can still use V-brakes in the front. This will do RF quite nicely. Yeah, I thought it had enough pressure to hold it there. It didn't. I barely let go and it just... So I decided to cut down on the spaces a little bit by cutting the stereo tube down. Whoever did the last cut job didn't do a very good job because it was a bit jagged and uneven. So along with the GT stamped handlebar from Andrew, I got this top cap, which is pretty cool. So after measuring and centering the handlebar, it took a few tries, but apparently this is center. It certainly doesn't look it, so I'm guessing the knurling, the stamping, the whole handlebar is offset quite a little bit. So with the handlebar centered, it looks a little bit goofy. I see this happen quite a lot, where the knurling is offset to one side, like they haven't centered it properly. Not really a big deal, but something to look out for, that you can't always trust the knurling. So I found these GT grips. They were off Sam's build actually. So, and one of the previous GT builds on the channel. All of a sudden I remembered that I was going to throw paracord on the chainstay. This just makes a really good chainstay protector, and you can customize the colors really easily. So I had some purple and white kicking around, which actually worked out really well because the decals that came factory on the bike actually had purple and white in them anyway. So before putting the cables down, it's a good idea to finish up any last little things. So this is pretty much my last opportunity to do the paracord wrap. There are plenty of different ways to wrap paracord, but just to keep it simple, I do it the same way that you wrap finishing twine for bar tape wrap. So there's a few instructionals online to see how to do that, but it's pretty simple and it doesn't require any tape or ties or anything to finish it off, so it looks quite tidy. But if you do use white, expect it to get pretty dirty pretty quickly. As soon as the chain slaps up against it, you'll probably get a mark. I wouldn't worry about it too much though, but you can always just use black with another color if you want to hide it a bit. So most of the build went quite smoothly. There were a couple of small hiccups, like the handlebar centering and me forgetting to do the chainstay wrap, but I remembered before it was too late. So there's still a couple of things to do. Got to adjust the gears a little bit better. And then this rear wheel, it had a little bit of a wobble to it. It has a little bit of up and down wobble as well, which is pretty annoying to get out, but I'll do the best I can. This seat was about the only thing that I could find that sort of suit the build. So after some Kinsu glue in the holes, it should tidy up quite nicely. And this is it all done. So taking it out for the test ride, I was really stoked with it. I'm just going to show you some of the riding footage now, and then sort of come back a little bit later and tell you how it went. Oh, I did have a bail. I didn't get it on camera though. I did like a double barrel roll. A combination of things. It was completely my fault. The bike's okay, but yeah. So the bike overall is great. You can't really go wrong with the 90s GT. They just ride really well. They're fun, they handle really nicely. They're quite wheelie capable. I'm not the best at wheelies, but the front can get up pretty well. The front brake needs a little bit of adjusting. So one of the springs, I tightened it up too much, so the other side is lagging a little bit. The front shock, it also needs a little bit of pressure to support my weight. I'm pretty sure I weigh quite a bit more than Arfi though, so this might be enough. I'll probably put some more in, just so then he can take out a little bit if need be. Other than that, no complaints. Bike ride's great, it's a GT. If you haven't rode a GT, I highly recommend getting one if you can find one sort of in your size or thereabouts. They're really fun bikes. Probably best suited to like a playful fun bike or a fun commuter or something. I'd love to take this on some trails. I took it on a little bit of single track through here, but it's nothing too serious. So I wouldn't actually like to take this to sort of a bike park or something with a bit more single track that's a little bit faster. I think it'd be really great there. I've taken a GT on some single track before and it's been great, but I haven't taken an alloy one of this era. I think it'll be heaps of fun. Thanks for checking the video out. Arfi, I hope you really like the bike. I'll see you as soon as I can. I look forward to seeing what you do with it, where you take it. Thank you to everyone for checking out the videos, for subscribing, for sharing them with friends. It really does mean a lot to me. So thanks to everyone. Thanks for checking out the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.